All right, one by one, we'll go around the room. Your war summer vacation, Sean Cunningham, and keep it non-wrestling related, because we're going to get into the wrestling. The last thing we want to do is, jump the gun and start talking wrestling too soon. It's like, you got to seduce the audience first. Can't just be some dry humping going on. So, Sean Cunningham, your summer vacation, your time away from war, how was it? What'd you get up to? And again, keep it non-wrestling related if you can.
Non-wrestling related? Oh, easy. This summer's been about visiting family and welcoming new family. I had visits with my sisters earlier in the summer and my parents, and my sister had a brand new baby boy who my nephew named Wyatt was born a few weeks ago.
Follow the buzzards, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I fought the urge to buy him a fedora and a Hawaiian shirt when he was born. It's okay.
So, a new addition.
Yeah.
Not Bobby Brown, not Belle Biv DeVoe, not Johnny Gill or Ralph Tresvant, but a new member to the family of Sean Cunningham. That's very, very exciting, and we all wish you a happy. I guess this is your new nephew.
Yeah, my new nephew.
Well, happy uncle for the how many time?
In my family, this is number 2.
So happy uncle 2 times over.
Yes. Thank you.
Right on, Sean.
Yeah. Now, Shotgun Shan, I haven't talked to you in a little while.
I wish I had something as uplifting as Sean to say. I spent my summer basically learning salsa dancing and trying to kick my meth addiction, and I only succeeded at one. So we'll leave it up to you to decide which one that was.
Let's hope your kids never have any interest in listening to old podcasts in 10 years or something like that.
Of course, I'm kidding. Please,
yeah.
Let's not. Yeah, it's been a good summer, man. It's just been a lot of running around doing stuff, a lot of little day trips, and no big highlights, but it's been good. Just been good. Let's say that.
No salsa lessons?
Well, the salsa lessons. That part's true.
Basically dancing around your house going dun 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 dun. There we go. That was some good synchronization there. Me, since we're playing elementary school and we're all sitting around with our legs crossed and sharing our summer vacations with each other.
Yeah.
I guess really what I have to do, because I said I was going to keep this non-wrestling related, and we're really trying to just engage the audience before we drop the meat and potatoes on them.
Yeah.
I can't really give you a lot of information of what I've done that is non-wrestling related over the past few weeks for our little summer vacation that we've taken. But I will say this, every year around this time for G1 season, we will be taking a break. At least I will be taking a break. If these guys want to do something else, or Sean wants to, hit up the history of wrestling in future years during this time, or Shan has some ideas for some of his great spin-off ideas. Shan's the idea guy, so you never know what he may come. We may have a full-fledged sitcom by the time I come back after summer vacation, with other actors playing, Luke and Sean, and Shan starring as the lead. Yeah, guys, basically G1 season, I really enjoyed taking some time to myself to just watch wrestling and not have to think about what I'm going to say, taking notes, or what, how am I going to present this on the air. It was really fun to just be a fan, sit back, watch my favorite promotion daily, and just really soak it all in rather than having to cover it. Like a lot of other people have been doing, nothing against them, and God bless them, in fact, for being able to get on after every show and talk about what's been going on. For us, I think we're just going to sort of sit back, watch it. We'll maybe do a show like we did this year. I think each of us we did a Vintage and a War Weekly, where we talked about, just the opening weekend of the G1. And then we will take a break, and then we will be back following the closing of the G1, which was this past Sunday. So I guess I'm going to lead this first segment, and you heard the theme song there at the beginning of the show, and it's a theme song I heard many, many times on my summer vacation. Of course, that's the G1 theme. And G1 25 years since this concept was created. And the very first G1 finals, which, to be honest, had a very similar atmosphere crowd-wise to what you saw on Sunday for the finals this year. And that, of course, was involving Keiji Muto and Masahiro Chono. But again, guys, I know you've been able to see quite a bit of it. We'll keep this mostly focused on the closing weekend. But just for those that don't know what the G1 is, it is a 2-block round-robin tournament. 20 guys, 10 in each block. Everybody fights everybody. the man with the most points at the end of that session of that league, the one with the most points will be the winner of his block, and he will go on to face the winner of the other block in the finals. This year in Block A, AJ Styles, Togi Makabe, Hiroshi Tenzan, Hiroshi Tanahashi, Tetsuya Naito, Katsuyori Shibata, Toru Yano, Luke Gallows, Doc Gallows, Bad Luck Fale, Kota Ibushi. Block B, Kazuchika Okada, Haruki Goto, Yuji Nagata, Kojima, Nakamura, Ishii, Takahashi, with the lovely Mao, of course, Carl Anderson, Michael Elgin, and Tomoaki Hanma, of course, who comes into play a little bit later. So, first of all, guys, let's just talk a bit about the closing weekend. There's a few matches I really think we need to talk about. Me and Sean were here talking about Kota Ibushi and Tanahashi from the opening weekend, and there's some other really hot matches that happened there early on, and we sort of covered them on the show. But for the closing weekend, it was basically there were 5 matches that are must-see matches, and we'll sort of go through them here. Has everybody seen? I know there's been a lot of catching up. Shan, you've done more the Netflix style. You've done the binge watching with the G1 and sort of, caught up, in big blocks. Sean has been, pretty casually going as, through every week. Have you been pretty much caught up every week?
Yeah,
for the most part?
Yeah, I've caught up through everything. Just some crazy stuff. And this is really my first introduction to watching a lot of the New Japan product. So I noticed some things about the presentation that really intrigued me as well. But we'll talk about those as we go on. Right.
So you were more like the on-demand type. You were the guy that was catching up a day or two later, but pretty much staying on top of things, all the major matches as every week went by. That was Sean Cunningham.
Yeah, that was basically.
And I was the live guy. I was the guy up at 5:30 in the morning watching live for no reason other than I'm a huge fan, and that way if I watch it, it's already out of the way because there's so many damn shows and they pile up. So if you watch it live, you get it out of the way. The opening, in terms of the way that the shows were structured, the first half of the show was in many ways missable, but if you watched it, you probably enjoyed it.
Let me just say something here.
Go for it. Before anybody jump in at any time. Go for it.
I watched. I was picking and choosing the big matches throughout the tournament, but the last 2 days I watched the entirety of the show from top to bottom for the last 2 days of the tournament, and I love their 8-man tags. I love when they throw all these guys together. In WWE, it would be like a 5-minute nothing match. In New Japan, it's always significant and exciting. And I enjoyed a lot. I can't even remember because I saw so many of them, because it's kind of their go-to format for the opening part of the G1 show. But there were so many matches I just loved, particularly following Naito and his little mini feud with Shibata. And so go ahead. But I just wanted to add, those matches that are kind of missable, I loved.
Naito's going to get some press. But, Sean, what did you think of the structure of these shows? This is a new thing. This is one thing about the G1. They tweak it a lot. It's not always the same every year. It seems like they're always trying to find that perfect balance. And a lot of the times, for last year, it was like A block and B block every night on every show. So it would be like, 10 insane matches, which is really great and blows your mind and everything. But for you being this, your first G1, especially for something that you've been following like currently as it's happening, what did you think of the structure of how they put this thing together?
I think that if you compare it to the structure that you just described, I guess, from last year, of 10 blow-up matches in a night versus doing 8-mans and putting the G1 matches at the main event spots, I think that's a little smarter because you're getting more shows out of it, B, you're not blowing up your crowd halfway through. By the time they get to the last match, they're exhausted.
Now, guys,
probably even more so than the workers are.
Now, Sean, I'll ask you this again because you've been sort of watching it currently on demand type of stuff.
Yep.
Too many shows? Is there ways to cut down on shows maybe for next year if you're going to tweak it, and that's usually what they're doing? Was it too many shows?
I don't know if it's too many shows, but I look at the format and I wonder if there's a way to almost spread it out so they're not working what seemed like almost every single night.
There's definitely, there'd be times when you'd be working 3 days in a row. Then they'd usually get a bit of a break, usually midweek and then back for the weekend and stuff like that.
Is there a way to even, maybe if you started the tournament earlier and gave them extra days off?
Right. I just think that there's definitely the idea of sort of combining this format with the one from last year and previous, they did the same thing the year before too.
Yeah.
Maybe have just certain really big shows where it's A and B block matches all on the same thing. But then, I don't know,
Can I ask, Luke, how is it presented in Japan, like to the Japanese core audience? Are these pay-per-views or are these just live TV?
This is live TV.
Okay.
But this is, it's on New Japan World. In terms of how it airs, like on their actual TV, I would have to ask people living in Japan. I know a lot of these shows were, but all of them no. A lot of these shows, as you saw, like by a lot of the production in certain matches, and the fact that there were a lot of matches that didn't have any commentary at all for certain shows, a lot of these were house shows because the G1's not just a tournament, it's a tour. So that means they still do house shows, and everything is involved in encompassing of the G1. So it's like you still had G1 matches that were important and still counted, but they would be on house shows in front of 1,000 people. So again, it's a lot of those things are just New Japan exclusives. There were certain things. It's interesting because they have a deal with two different television companies. It's totally different. I guess in North America, WWE would have a deal with two different networks, right?
Yeah.
It's not like they just have to be exclusive with one. So it's the same thing there. They have the deal with TV Asahi. They also have the deal with Samurai TV. So a lot of these shows aired on Samurai TV. A lot of the ones you saw on New Japan World with no commentary aired on Samurai with commentary. So again, it's hard to really give you a simple answer for it other than not all of these shows were on television, but a lot of them were.
But would it be also New Japan trying to, again, similar to what we've seen with WWE Network, trying to build their New Japan World, and if you have something like G1, why, if you can't get TV that night, why not put it on your streaming service, right?
Oh, it's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. And we can be in Port Hope, Ontario, Canada, for example, and watch a live New Japan show at 5:30 in the morning on a daily basis. So, I mean, that's pretty damn cool when you think of where technology is.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's the deal there with the tournament and the structure. And again, there's always tweaks that are going to be made on this thing. But regarding the 5 big matches which I talked about from this closing weekend, and then I'll give you sort of my list of the matches that everybody needs to go search from the entire tournament. I got just like a list of like maybe 7 or 8 matches that everybody needs to look up. But the 5 that took place this past weekend, did everybody on the line right now see the Hiroshi Tanahashi versus AJ Styles match from Friday night?
Yes.
Yes.
Flair Steamboat-esque has been talked about a lot with, obviously a modernized version, but that real state-of-the-art and just a chemistry. We've seen these guys work together before. Typical Tanahashi match. It starts slow, but the guy knows when it's time to, take it up a notch, and he knows when it's time to go to the finish. Like this guy, the way he lays out his matches are incredible. AJ, we've talked about over and over. But, I mean, to highlight some of the things from this match, it reached a point near the end. The crowd was really getting hot. And Tanahashi hit AJ. I think he tried for the Styles Clash once and failed, right?
Yes.
I believe, yeah.
I think, AJ hooked him with the ankle lock and blocked it. But then Tanahashi did get AJ Styles in his own move, the Styles Clash, for a near fall. Crowd goes completely crazy for that. And very shortly after that, AJ Styles giving Tanahashi the big frog splash, a really awesome looking frog splash for the near fall again. Thoughts just on the way that these two guys are able to work their big matches?
Go ahead, Sean.
I was just going to say, I've never seen, probably since Flair and Steamboat in the 80s, two guys with timing and how to read a crowd like AJ and Tanahashi. And that's what I took away from it. They were able to get the crowd to care at every move, especially in the last 10 minutes, to the point where they were almost reacting to the crowd as much as the crowd was reacting to them.
I agree. Yeah, I think that certainly is where their strengths lay. The other thing, too, about these two guys that made it so special is, in wrestling, there's always a bunch of guys you look at and go, oh, so-and-so can have a good match with anybody. Both AJ and Tanahashi fall into that category. The guys that can pull a good match out of a lesser opponent, when you put them in with someone who's at the same level, it's magic. And that's really kind of what it was distilled down to in that match for me, was two really masterful competitors going together in this one match.
Masters of the art. That's absolutely the way to describe those two in the ring together. And of all the matches they've had, I think this is my favorite. One thing that's interesting, and this is not by accident, AJ, if you notice, for the majority, I think pretty much all of his G1 matches, except the Fale match, the whole Bullet Club is out there. Did anyone else notice that AJ was the one guy from the Bullet Club to have nobody at ringside?
Yeah, I thought that was kind of strange.
Definitely the babyface turn. Alarm bells were going off for me for the majority of the tournament with AJ. We've all heard the reactions, and the fact that they decided to not send anybody out there when every other Bullet Club match has somebody at ringside. No interference for the majority of AJ's matches, and this one with Tanahashi was just straight up mano a mano. Maybe that's why I liked it so much too, because a lot of their other matches have been, there's been a lot of interference and American style tricks and whatever. So we know how good AJ is. We've talked on and on about it. We're going to talk more about how good Tanahashi is, but this was to determine the A block winner. And Tanahashi with the high fly flow. These announcers, when they call that move,
I would.
And again, this happens in the finals, but they call that move with like every ounce of energy and every vocal ability that they have. I mean, they actually tire themselves out calling that move, high fly flow.
I was pretty sure the one guy was having an aneurysm as he finished.
Right. And I can't remember that guy's name. I always forget it. But if you see him, he's so cute. He has these little dimples, and he's actually like a pretty young-looking guy. And he's got that call, man. And he does it with some other things. But yeah, the high fly flow is the move that he just puts it all. We talk about Tanahashi and AJ and Nakamura and all these guys laying it all out on the line. That guy lays it all out on the line, no question. But yeah, great match. And Tanahashi, of course, won that block. Now we're going to move on to Saturday. The two big matches from Saturday. This one is like. Honestly, I might get a little emotional talking about it because this is a guy, Sean Cunningham and I, within the last 5 years, we're sitting in this tiny little, what was it, a armory or just some little boys and girls club.
Yeah.
And we watched this guy work, no guardrail, no nothing. And right in front of us, within the last 5 years against Steve Corino.
That's right.
And this guy is about as local can get for people like myself and Shan especially. I mean, this is like... For me, it's like a half-hour drive. He grew up like a half-hour drive. We have to assume that nobody out there, in Australia knows where Oshawa is. So he's from Oshawa, Ontario. I'm from Port Hope, Ontario. Shotgun Shan as well, originally from there. And that's like a half-hour drive from where we grew up. And it's kind of amazing to think that this guy got sent over there. Everybody scoffed about it. Everybody said there's so many better choices. Why him? Because he really hasn't been lighting it on fire. Shan and Sean, you guys both watch Ring of Honor. Michael Elgin has not been lighting it on fire in Ring of Honor, correct?
Not since the title was taken from him, basically.
Yeah, I always kind of looked at Elgin as I didn't quite understand what the big deal was. I mean, obviously I saw him in some great matches, but overall he didn't seem to carry them, and that seems to have changed since he's gone to New Japan.
It really does feel like it's his calling. I know this is where he wants to be, where he's wanted to be, but it's a guy with a dream that got this opportunity. And let's face it, not only did his Japanese career rest on this tour, if he didn't impress, he wasn't being brought back to Japan, right? But it's not just that. If he goes over there and doesn't impress, that sacrifices everything in North America as well. Because Ring of Honor's not looking at him as a top guy right now. And if he goes over there and he doesn't impress, he's just going to come back and they're going to say, well, we don't even know if we want to have you around anymore. You went over and you were in the G1 with all those great guys and you didn't even have, any kind of showing for yourself. The complete opposite happened with Michael Elgin. Shan, I think you were actually in the middle of watching the show. You hadn't even finished the show, but I mean, you were getting at me mid-show, which you never do, to say, holy crap, the match with Elgin and Ishii just blew my frickin' mind. Do you want to talk about that match for a while?
Well, I mean, there have been a lot of Ishii matches where we said, oh, it's Godzilla versus King Kong and, whatever, particularly with Makabe. But this one was even more so. These were two rough, tough guys, but both with fantastic technical skills. And you don't get guys like that very often where they're just rough and crazy, but they pull out in the midst of it some great technical moves. And this was a match where I watched a lot of it kind of through my fingers with my hands over my face because I couldn't believe, particularly the spot where Elgin powerbombed Ishii into the railing. And it was slightly obscured by where the people were at ringside, so I didn't actually see which part of Ishii's head hit the rail, but something must have. And it was an unprotected metal rail. And it was crazy. I couldn't believe the match went on from that, and it did continue for quite a long time. Tons of crazy power moves, and it was just exciting. It was a really exciting match. I wouldn't say it was my favorite match of the G1, but it was certainly a contender for favorite.
with that whole, the whole power bomb into the rail, I mean, that was not a crash pad. the cameraman just wasn't ready for it, and that's it. And they zoomed in, seconds after you heard that horrific sound. And, I mean, his head was just between the bars of that, what do you call that thing? Like a little railing. It's one of those old school railings that you'd use at, like, I don't know, in the NWA, I think they used railings like that. Yeah. Sean, you saw this match, yeah?
I did. One of the stiffest things I've ever seen, but it really was, for the majority, two guys just kind of pounding each other into the ground until one didn't get up. That was basically what they did.
And let's face it, these guys are two fucking little teapots. They're short and stout, Yeah. And they both kind of have like the same build, and they're both around the same height. Michael Elgin's power is it's insane. It's superhuman, the things that this guy is able to do with his strength. And I think what we have to say at this point about Elgin is the fact that from one tour in Japan, this guy's over like crazy with the Japanese audience.
Absolutely. They were chanting his name through most of the match.
They were chanting his name in other matches, too. This was not his only good match. He had a match with Goto a few days before this, a week or so before this. And it was like Goto's the IC champ. And he beats him with his finish after this great match. And by the time Goto's just like celebrating and holding up his title, they're already chanting Elgin. And it's this guy that just doesn't have the personality in the States. And maybe that Ring of Honor 100 miles a minute, million moves a second style is just not the right fit for him. But this Japanese style, this New Japan style, where you kind of slow it down a little bit, it's still high impact, but we can all agree. I mean, for the most part, the heavyweights in New Japan, they slow it down a lot more, and it's not that everything against, being thrown against the wall 100 miles an hour. That Ring of Honor is nothing against that style. It's just two different styles, and it seems like Elgin's found one that really clicks with him. He's coming back. This guy's coming back, and I think he's going to be a player.
Yeah. It would be so bad of New Japan to not bring him back, especially as a foreigner that can work their pace and their style and connect with the fans. I think it would be a mistake not to have him back, because you don't know how much longer some of these other American wrestlers are going to stay.
And Shan, you brought this up, and it's such a good point, is that you've seen big guys brawl, and you've seen these kind of matches where, all the stiff shit. The headbutt that Ishii gave to Elgin at the end, and it looks like, it absolutely connects full speed ahead on Elgin's chin. How did Elgin not get knocked out? There was the huge, I think it was just a big punch or something from Elgin that he did a few minutes before that on Ishii where, Ishii just collapsed. There was nothing selling about it. He just collapsed in a heap. But you talk about the brawls and you talk about two big guys going at it, but the athleticism, and I don't think I've ever seen two guys of this body type move like that and have matches like that and throw each other around like that and suplex each other like that.
Yeah, I agree with you. They were up there with, Kevin Steen or Kevin Owens, whatever you want to call him, as far as having this weird kind of mutation of the big, heavy brawler with the this explosive power and these moves you aren't expecting. And I was so impressed with both of them, and I felt so good for Elgin. Not just that that the match went the way it did, but just that he put on such a great showing for himself. Like a really memorable showing in your first G1 has got to be priceless.
Sure, because there's a lot of guys on their roster that are given the opportunity that can't do what he did. There's like Takahashi, for instance. They've put him in a couple years now and hoping that maybe this will be the way to bring something out of him, and it's not. And there's a lot of guys like that. And Elgin is brought over for the first time. The Japanese like big, white, powerful American wrestlers. Look at the guys that have been successful in Japan that haven't other places. Scott Norton. Was it
Stan Hansen, Vader?
Yeah, exactly. And the one that he reminds me of the most, and he's like the modern equivalent of, is Dr. Death.
Yeah.
You look at him, and for anyone out there that only knows Dr. Death from his run in WWE or his run even in NWA or WCW, go online, type in Steve Williams, Dr. Death, All Japan Wrestling, and then prepare to pick your jaw off of the floor and sweep up the pieces. And that's really what Elgin is the modern day equivalent of. And it doesn't really, now that I've seen what he's got inside of him, the sky is the limit, because this was a huge test and he delivered in spades. Now going on to the main event of Saturday night.
Sorry, buddy, there's a phone call.
Don't worry about it.
Just give me 1 sec.
Sure thing.
I'm just going to turn the volume down. There we go.
The main event of that show, which was to determine the B block winner who would go on to face Hiroshi Tanahashi in the finals, Chaos versus Chaos, Shinsuke Nakamura versus Kazuchika Okada. One thing I love about the G1, and you put two guys of the same faction in a match, it's like you can come in the ring and you can shake hands and you can be buddies. The second that bell rings, I'm tearing your throat out.
Yeah.
And that was the way they worked that match. There was nothing. They were not at all trepidatious about anything in the early stages or just kind of playing around or having fun. It was a full speed, hardcore, stiff, tough match. For God's sakes, Okada gave Nakamura a tombstone on the floor. That's not something you do to your buddy, but in the G1 you do because it's all about winning. And of course, once that bell rings at the end, sure, we can shake hands and we can be friends. But you see this a lot. I mean, in the G1, the Bullet Club do it a little different. They tend to bring in more of the comedy. And there was some fun comedy Bullet Club stuff that happened over this the course of the tournament, Fale and AJ and et cetera, where they start it like a big joke, and then by the end, they're pretty, it gets pretty heated. But Nakamura and Okada, again, one of these matches, it's a slow burn. It doesn't start on a high note necessarily. It builds towards it, much like AJ and Tanahashi. And by the end, once again, you have the crowd going just absolutely in hysterics. You have the announcer who does, again, that call.
Yep.
It's like he's trying to, I think the reason he does that, he's trying to scream over the people. It's one of those crowds like you can't hear yourself think.
There was a couple points where Okada was going to do Rainmaker, where, again, I thought the announcer was going to, lose his voice. Well, he was screaming it when he was setting up for Rainmaker. I was like, oh my gosh.
I thought he was going to lose his lunch and puke all over the mic. The guy was screaming so hard. And
I can't wait till they get the technology or they get to the point where they can dedicate some real translation, so you can watch a translated version with the text below. Because I want to know what these guys are screaming. I mean, I can kind of get the gist of it. But they're so passionate. I would love to know what the actual verbiage was that they were using. And
we will get there. I have no doubt in my mind we will get to a point where you can have the closed captioning in different language for whatever, anything.
Yeah.
And that'll be great. That'll be so good. Because these announcers, I mean, there's good American announcers, and Mauro Ranallo and Josh Barnett do a great job on Access and everything. But these guys are a next level of passion with the way they call this. So this, again, great match. Another great match. I mean, both of those, Tanahashi, AJ, and this, you could easily give that a 5-star rating for both.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I would think so.
And as you say, Sean, he went for the Rainmaker a few times, particularly at the end where Nakamura turned into that cool armbar.
Sick-looking armbar. I was like,
yeah, the flipping armbar. Everybody out there that's fans of MMA is just screaming at not the radio, but the speakers of their computer or their phone.
Yeah.
And or their tablet, and they're just screaming the name of it. I actually can say, unfortunately, due to my ignorance, I don't know the name of that move.
No, I can't help you on that one either.
But what a sequence.
Oh God, yeah.
And then sort of the delay on Nakamura really trying to cinch it in, and eventually getting the tap from Okada, the world champion, tapping to Nakamura. And we can talk about what that may mean, because it wasn't for no reason. And actually, you know what? Even Okada's already out there talking about he wants to face everybody that beat him in the tournament because he's bothered by it. So he's already saying he wants to face Nakamura for the title. So when that happens, I don't know, but you could do it whenever.
That'll be fun.
Yes, and again, that could change the complexion of what we're about to talk about as well. So that was that match. Now moving on to the finals, the day of the finals, as we talked about off air, but we'll just quickly reference here. Delirious did show up at the beginning of the show. And what did you say? How did you explain the way Delirious was talking? Delirious never talks, and for some reason they sent him here to talk. So
for some reason, Delirious spoke as though he was a Japanese person that didn't speak English. So he was like, "I'm glad to be here in Japan, greatest." Sports of all. And I was like, what? Wait a minute. Is this a joke? Are we supposed to be offended by this? Is this supposed to somehow make people that don't speak English understand you a little better? It was really weird. It was that kind of Tarzan talk, but with the stereotypical Japanese accent. And yet he did it with a straight face. And I was like, what in the world is this all about? But
yeah. Right. So again, the behind the scenes being that Delirious he's the booker of Ring of Honor. He was sent over there with Elgin. not just to contribute, or I don't know, maybe to watch Elgin's back a little bit, but more so to go over there and have a meeting and sort of make good on. There's been some weirdness, with the whole NXT thing and how that went down, and Liger and everything. So he was sent over there to sort of smooth everything out, and it looks like everything has been smoothed out between Ring of Honor and New Japan for now.
That's good news, man. Because I was a little bit nervous. I can't really see WWE integrating New Japan and New Japan stars and New Japan style into their product effectively without diluting it and turning it into something that's much less than what we get to see, particularly what we got to see up close and personal during the Ring of Honor New Japan tour that we were at. That's good news.
Good news for us on that front, right? That
will continue next year now because of. The deal has clearly been done between ROH and New Japan.
Now, of course, anything can change, and this does not mean that WWE's not working with them or it's hands off or anything like that. It just means we're good, everything's cool, we're going to keep working together, and Delirious announced that Ring of Honor would be doing a tour of Japan, their first tour of Japan, which will be, again, co-promoted by New Japan.
I really hope they shoot the ROH TV over there, because that'll be fun, too.
Honestly, dude, from this tournament, you could easily put Elgin over Goto for the title.
Yeah.
You could do it either in North America when Goto comes here, because he's going to be wrestling him at the Field of Honor, I believe. Or you could send Elgin over there for that Ring of Honor thing. And you could do something with Elgin much bigger than any of us had imagined. So, again, this is all cool. But the final show, the Bucks match, do we want to talk about that at all?
I mean, it was a Bucks match. They're always good. But yeah, it was another Bucks match, and they always deliver at the same level.
Really,
there's never any disappointment. And
Red Dragon's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, Red Dragon is a modern British Bulldogs kind of thing for me in Japan.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, I mean, now I'll ask you this as a huge Bucks fan, Shotgun Shan. Do they need to, at times for certain matches, big title matches, do they need to dial back on the comedy?
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, I agree with you there, but it's such a big part of who they are, and they deliver in their athleticism to such a level that they're one of the few teams that I think can get away with it in almost all circumstances. Because you're never taken out of the moment, because they'll turn right around and do something insane. So,
sure.
I see where you're going with it, and I wouldn't disagree. But I think if it's not broke, don't fix it. That's what I say.
Okay.
And is their need for comedy the main reason that they would never really work long term in a WWE or TNA setting?
I mean, yeah. WWE. The thing is, WWE wants them, and they've made it very clear that they wanted them, and they were turned down. And
but would WWE try and stifle them if they went? That's
what comedy. See, I almost feel like they'd make them more comedy.
Yeah, I think that they'd be more comedy, less of the stuff that we really love. I think that's what they'd capitalize on, make them most obnoxious. WWE is so often just about the character and not about the match. And the focus being on the character. And I think that with the Bucks, I think you'd lose the things that make them so awesome.
Unless you were to put them in NXT in that smaller format.
And that's where they would be, to be honest. Yeah. I really don't see them on Raw anytime soon. Is there a chance they could end up there? I think there's a chance all these guys in New Japan could end up there, because you can't do this style forever. As much as AJ even says, I want to retire in New Japan. The body, think about this month that these guys have had, guys. This is insane. And I know it's not like this all the time, but as a shoot, my mind is blown for how tough and how durable these athletes are, that they were able to have as many of these kinds of matches in such a short period of time. I mean, even just the weekend. We talked about 5 matches. I mean, I don't know, maybe you don't put the next match as a 5-star, and we can talk about it, but I mean, at least 4 matches from that weekend that you could say were 5-star matches, and they involved a lot of the same people. But let's talk about this. On the cards full of, the hard-hitting heavyweight style of the G1, this match was a very, very different flavor, very, very different style, and a very, very different tempo and a very different pace. The purists, the old school fans, may hate this match. I personally love this match, but Ricochet versus Kushida for the Junior Heavyweight Championship. Shotgun Shan, you want to go first on this one?
Well, I mean, what do you expect? You hear those 2 names, and you know it's going to be something special. And, Ricochet, I've only just been introduced to Ricochet recently, really. I mean, in the past maybe 6 to 8 months by, you showing me some of his big matches. It was great. It was a great combination of style. And it was one of those great matches where they really played it up that the 2 guys really respected each other. So that wasn't this crazy personal, I'm trying to, crush you, type angle they were playing out through it. It was more of a deep competitive, respect thing. I really enjoyed it. I mean, you can't not enjoy it when those 2 guys are in the ring together.
I just felt there was something that made that match stand out. Like you said, you had all these big heavyweight guys, and you had these two quick guys that just moved and moved and moved and moved and moved for the majority of it. And it almost reminded me of watching a little Mexican style match.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Shane. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to agree. I'd say that is a very fair comparison as far as the style. I think that not the style of the match, but the tone of the match, I think, fell into that category.
It was like a modern, whoever the best cruiserweights would be in WCW during the heyday of Nitro. It was that kind of thing, a modern version of that for me. I mean, it's that mix of styles. But yeah, Ricochet, would it be a stretch to say he's the most gifted athlete in wrestling right now?
Acrobatically, perhaps?
That's what I'm saying, yeah. Acrobatic.
He might be the most acrobatic, I would say. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of guys that would go into that category. But
he's got like the gift to me. When I see him, I'm just like, man, even the simple flying stuff, he does it a different way. He has like a different, I don't know how to explain it exactly, but when I watch him, I really do feel like the fact that he's in his 20s, I mean, he's going to be something very special. He just needs to make sure he doesn't get hurt.
Yeah, you and I have talked about this before, Luke. Sorry, Shan. Just about wrestlers with body control. Ricochet is another one of those guys.
Yeah, and it's freakish. It really is. And he doesn't. The craziest part about his flying is it doesn't even look like he's trying. It doesn't look like it takes him much effort to do. What was it? What do they call it? The 630?
Yeah.
He just puts his hands in the air and does a 630. Like it doesn't look like he exerted any energy at all. So yeah, a really cool match, and again something very different, which was welcome for me, just to see something different. And Kushida gets the win again. There was that dive early on, which really played in well to the finish, and I don't know if it was supposed to, psychology-wise. You guys can maybe tell me what you think, but Ricochet hits that post flip.
Yeah.
He runs all the way across the ring, jumps over the post, and does a flip. And he hit his one arm, and they showed it on the replay, just completely smoked his own arm on the railing, which really led, into the finish of the hoverboard lock and the various times that he got him in that, and he was able to escape a few times. But I don't know if that was intentional, that he intentionally tried to hit his elbow on the railing, or if that was just out of control flying Ricochet. I don't know. It's hard to say with that, but it really did work into the psychology of the hoverboard lock being the finish. And Kushida gets the win. And then afterwards, Ricochet, who did defeat Kushida in the finals of the Super Junior last year, did the whole, we're 1-1. So it looks like there may be another match in the future between those two, and that's good shit. It was good to see Ricochet back for a little while in New Japan. So,
yeah, I'm not sure a third match is going to be a bad thing.
No, I think it could be better. Like, as good as this match was, it could have been better, and that's what's freakish, is that it really could have been. These guys, I've seen them deliver better. And so, again, number 3, who knows? We'll see, and I look forward to that. I don't know when it will be, though. It could not be for quite some time. Main event time, folks. We get the announcement. This is where New Japan suffers, because from what I hear, the pop for Chono and Muto, a.k.a. the Great Muta, returning to New Japan before the finals of the G1. As I said earlier, they were the two gentlemen that were in the finals of G1 the very first time. And here they are returning to the company to do commentary for Nakamura versus Tanahashi in the main event of G1 25 years later. And the pop supposedly was huge. You don't hear it because in New Japan World, they have to pump in that awful stock music, right? Yeah. The Fire Pro Wrestling stock music, where they crank it up so loud to drown out the other music, which they don't have copyrights to. And that's just one of those unfortunate things. I mean, they're trying to keep this thing somewhat, the cost down, and they can't afford a lot of these songs. So, or they just are choosing not to put the money towards that. But I don't know. They're going to have to figure something out, because all this editing is just too much. And the WWE network is bad enough for that, but New Japan World is much worse. So we didn't get to really fully feel, first of all, the themes of those two gentlemen, which are both great, or the pop. But they're back for this match. Muto with a teddy bear on his t-shirt.
Yeah.
Still got that very strange charisma that he's always had. And they sat at ringside for this one. The atmosphere was very similar to that very first G1. And it was absolutely electric. Nakamura, Tanahashi, let's just give you quickly, we're gonna wrap the New Japan stuff up very soon here, and we'll move on to SummerSlam. Shaka and Shan's gonna handle that side of things, and then I know Sean Cunningham has a special tribute for the closing of this show. So just to wrap things off on the New Japan tip, I do need to give you just quickly a bit of history regarding Tanahashi and Nakamura. And it also ties into Muto and Chono. As everybody knows, New Japan started in the 70s, 72. Throughout the 70s and the 80s, hot. Guys like Riki Choshu, guys like, its founder, Antonio Inoki, Fujinami. These were the big stars of that time. But then when you reach the early 90s, 1991, these guys were still the top stars, but it was that whole thing we're having even in WWE now. It's like, yeah, these guys are still really over, but they're getting old. We need to make new stars. We need to have the future of this company mapped out. Chono, Muto, they'd already been there for maybe, 5 years. Muta actually had his first real success in North America as the Great Muta, a gimmick created by Gary Hart when he was in the Crockett's. We've always talked about those days, Sean. We have always talked about the Flair and Muta stuff and all that. But Muto, when he returned and he was in New Japan as a star after becoming, Muta in Japan or in North America, they had to make some new guys as their top guys. And the G1 was their idea for doing this because they put those two guys, they weren't the top stars in the company by a long shot, but they were the finalists of this huge tournament, which involved all the top stars. And they went out there and the crowd was absolutely nuts and they tore it up. And that became sort of the rise of this new era in New Japan with these guys as the top stars, and those guys being the Three Musketeers. And they were all guys that were in the same dojo class, along with Jushin Thunder Liger, and that was Hashimoto, Muto, and Chono. So all those guys were from one class in the dojo. Think about that for a second. Just one of those magic times. So in around 85 or so, they all broke in. By the early 90s, they were ready to take over. So it was the Three Musketeers, and they really ruled the 90s. Those three guys, Hashimoto, Muto, Chono. And then we come to this awful time in New Japan, where the business collapses. Antonio Inoki loses his mind. He decides we're going to bring in real-life mixed martial artists and put them in shoot fights with our top wrestlers. We're going to put Jushin Thunder Liger in a shoot fight with a real mixed martial artist. Now, what do you think happened there? We're going to put Yuji Nagata in there with Crow Cop and Fedor. And what do you think happened there? So that was like your top stars got fed to real martial artists, and people lost faith in wrestling, and Antonio Inoki obviously had lost his mind. But, one thing that was coming at that time that was good was this new crop from the dojo, and what they were calling the new Three Musketeers, which was these three short-haired gentlemen, Hiroshi Tanahashi, Shinsuke Nakamura, and Katsuyori Shibata. The three of them were called the new Three Musketeers. And in that early 2000s era, they were the one thing in the company that people were looking at saying, at least there's these guys, and I can see some potential in them. So here we are all these years later, 2015, and Tanahashi and Hiroshi Tanahashi and Shinsuke Nakamura. After all those years, people watched them from being young boys coming in the early 2000s. Now they're completely different, both of them, physically and stylistically. And here they are, the two biggest characters, the two most over guys. And again, it's their homegrown talent that they watched come up. And here we are at G125, and they're in the finals. So again, that leads us into this match. Again, we've talked about so many great matches. What was it that made this match so special? I've been trying to put my finger on it.
To me, I think it was just, like you said, the energy in the building and the crowd made that match even better than it was. If you don't have that, I don't think we're talking about that match that was the final as much as it was the final and the most important match. We don't talk about it with the same reverence if you don't have that energy in the building.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And you know what? Last year, maybe it was the building or whatever, but Nakamura and Okada, great match and really over, but it wasn't any kind of atmosphere crowd-wise in terms of the way it came across on TV like this.
Yeah.
And Shan, again, this is another one after you saw. You didn't waste any time getting at me.
The thing about the match that I liked was it was something that we don't get to see in WWE very much, because this I would liken it to CM Punk in his the height of his popularity against John Cena, but with the fans actually loving John Cena and not hating them. It was really the two sides of the coin, with Nakamura being the kind of crazy cool, he's kind of the too cool to be a heel guy, and Tanahashi with being, the John Cena of New Japan, except everybody loves him. So it was kind of epic in that it was not just the significance of the tournament, but of the participants involved that I think made it really cool. And it showed. I mean, there were moments in that match where I was bugging out. Particularly, you remember that part where Tanahashi misses the high fly flow and Nakamura gives him the bumae to the back of the head? I swore it was over. I swore. I watched it and I'm like, it's got to be over. So it was. There were a lot of moments like that where I was.
It looked like Tanahashi was out.
It really did.
He was unconscious.
It looked like he actually, because the follow through when he hit him with the way that Tanahashi's head snapped, I thought he's really done it, or he's done it too hard, and this is the end of it. But crazy match.
Beautiful match. And again, we've talked on and on about Nakamura, how cool he is, how great he is, how charismatic he is, how talented in the ring he is. But god damn that Tanahashi. My god, this guy has got shot knees, shot back, shot neck. I don't know if you guys know this. He wrote a book and he talked about how his favorite wrestlers are American wrestlers mostly. I think we talked about this on the air. His favorite guys are Kurt Angle, Shawn Michaels.
You can see that.
You can see that. And the Dynamite Kid. Again, not an American wrestler, but a British wrestler / Canadian wrestler. Those are his like three favorite wrestlers, and those are the guys. And you can see there's something different about Tanahashi in New Japan than anyone else. He's got a lot more of that American psychology, but he is becoming like his hero Shawn Michaels in the sense of there was that time with Shawn's career after the comeback where it was like this guy's body is completely just broken down, and somehow, some way, he still may be the best wrestler in the whole world right now.
Yeah,
like he may be having the best matches in the world right now, and that was what Shawn was doing during that sort of mid 2000s time, and that's what Tanahashi is doing now. Like if we were to go around the room here, and I were to pick Tanahashi as the best wrestler in the world, Shawn were to pick Nakamura as the best wrestler in the world, well, I'd probably be Shan. As Shawn were to pick AJ, which could also be Shan, and then you were to go back to me and I were to say, actually guys, you know what? No, I think Okada's the best wrestler in the world. I think all of us would be right, and I would be right twice.
I think that may be accurate after watching this tournament.
You may very well have four guys that you could actually make a claim for are the best wrestlers in the world right now. And it's funny that it's the four top guys. And that's such a weird thing to think about, because you're always used to the top guys being the top guys, and then there's the guys underneath that are clearly better, but they're just not given the shot. In this case, I don't think you could really find four guys on that roster or in the world that are better than them. And it's at the big matches, at the big match, when it's time to deliver the big match, there's nobody better. So, yeah, Tanahashi ends up getting the win. I didn't even think that for a second that would happen, but it did.
Me either. I mean, I was surprised and a little bit disappointed for a moment, and then I thought, well, you know what? It was still an amazing match. I mean, I wanted Nakamura to win just because I'm such a huge Nakamura fan, but there was no shame in losing that match because it was such a massive, massive match.
Mm-hmm. Now, regarding going forward, Tanahashi and Okada, if that is the match, the story has been for years now that Okada can beat Tanahashi, but he can't beat him at the Tokyo Dome. He can't beat him at the biggest show of the year, you could say. They've done that in WWE too, where you can't beat The Undertaker at WrestleMania. It's the same kind of thing. So regarding that match happening again, I mean, sure, there may be a bit of disappointment, but you're still going to get another classic. So it's almost hard to get upset about. With that said, I have a real feeling that may not be the match. I have a feeling that by the time Wrestle Kingdom comes around, Nakamura will have beaten Okada. And because it's Wrestle Kingdom 10, and just like this was the G125, it's real nostalgia year. So I could really see it again being Nakamura and Tanahashi for the title at the Tokyo Dome. I really do feel like that would be the story that, like I say, these guys were the shining light of that horrible early 2000s era, and they have grown into these unbelievable talents and great characters just to look at physically in the ring. They're untouchable. I think that could very well happen. So anyways, guys, a great tournament, in case people can't tell by how exhausted we are after that review. Yes. And we're going to move on now to the SummerSlam thing. Just quickly before we get out, I'll give you this list that I made of some of these matches you need to go out and find from the G1. Opening night, Shibata versus AJ, Tanahashi versus Ibushi. Find that opening night show. Watch those last two matches. July the 24th, which was day 3, Shibata versus Naito. That's where that whole sort of thing began of Naito being very disrespectful to Shibata, spitting on him and all that stuff. So check that match out. The 26th of July, Kota Ibushi versus AJ and Tanahashi versus Naito. Naito's new character, Shan, how freaking great is this guy?
He's amazing. I mean, and I loved him when we saw him live, and that was before he'd even introduced this character. So it's amazing to see that they've taken him and made him even bigger. He's so fun to watch.
From the 29th of July, Shibata versus Ibushi, which may have been the craziest match of the entire tournament, right up there with Elgin and Ishii. I mean, just nuts. Not a flying match for Ibushi, a tough match with Shibata trying to kill him.
Yes.
Styles versus Naito, also from that show. From April 4th, Nakamura versus Goto. Nakamura got his revenge after these 2 losses, and he did pin Goto clean with his finish, the Bamaye. April the 8th, Tanahashi versus...
August.
Sorry, yes, of
April.
course. August, awkward the 4th, Nakamura versus Goto. From awkward the 8th, Tanahashi versus Shibata, which in my estimation is the most underrated match from the G1. 25. August 9th, Ishii versus Goto, yet another crazy Ishii match, and Goto's a great opponent for him. August the 12th, Goto versus Elgin, and Ishii versus Hanma. That was where Hanma got his very first G1 win after losing every single match last year. He got 1 win this year.
Oh, that's right.
And from the 14th, Tanahashi versus AJ Styles, which we talked about. From the 15th, Elgin versus Ishii, Nakamura versus Okada. And the finals, of course, you have to see Nakamura versus Hiroshi Tanahashi. Go ahead.
And what we'll do once we're done here, we'll have you post that list to Facebook so we can read through it.
Yeah, that's a good idea. So people can go out and find these matches. Again, there's many more, but these were the ones I thought really stood out. And Tanahashi at the end, after celebrating, he celebrated. I don't know if you guys realize this. This does have to be referenced very, very quickly. He celebrated for 30 minutes after he won. 30 minutes! The crowd was crying. The girls were crying. They were wiping their tears with the Tanahashi towels. At the very end, it looks like he's going to leave, and he does this a lot. His final word to the crowd. He's walking to the back, then he stops, comes back, wait, one more thing. And he says to the people, I love you. And everybody cheers. I love you, Shan. Have you ever heard a catchphrase like this?
I have not. But, well, actually, I shouldn't say. Yes, of course we have.
So not only does he have the feel the best, which it sounds like he should be doing a Viagra ad or something like that. But he also has his final thing, and this is going to be my final thing before we move on to SummerSlam. He says to the people, I love you. And they all say it with him, and then they cheer. This guy is a babyface. Now let's move on. Let's put this behind us. The G1, we're putting this in the rearview mirror. It's been a lot of fun, and you know what? I'm ready. I'm G1'd out. I'm ready to sort of put my focus towards WWE this weekend. And what's your estimation of how things have been shaping up for SummerSlam, Shan?
Well, listen, I mean, I want to go over this. I don't want to spend too much time because we just had such a great talk about the G1, and I really want to get to Sean's tribute at the end. But there's a few things here we need to talk about. And the first thing is, when they announced that SummerSlam was going to be 4 hours, I rolled my eyes because we know what a 4-hour WrestleMania looks like, which generally consists of a lot of musical stars being brought in and bad skits and some kind of celebrity angle, and maybe one match that they rush and then end up costing time for the main event. This year, we are looking at a 10-match card going into WrestleMania, and as going into SummerSlam, and as we discussed, one of these may be. And will probably be a pre-show match. But regardless, having a 9-match show for SummerSlam with relatively significant matches is kind of a big deal. So I'm feeling a bit optimistic on that level. I'm not going to talk about. I'll run down the undercard here. I only want to talk about the top matches, but you've got Primetime Players versus Los Matadores versus Lucha Dragons versus New Day for the tag championship match. I kind of hope New Day gets it again. I think they're so fun, and I'm kind of tired of the Primetime Players already.
Is that the match that goes to pre-show, do you think?
Well, it sounds like it would, but you never quite know. You've also got Ryback in his triple threat against Big Show and Miz. I don't think Ryback's going anywhere. You've got Team Bella versus Team BAD versus PCB. A few too many abbreviations for my liking.
Sorry.
Nice.
You've got the returning Ziggler against Rusev, which I'm sure will be entertaining. You've got Randy Orton against Sheamus, which I feel like I've seen too many times, but I bet it'll deliver on some level anyway. And then you've got the weird Stephen Amell and Neville against Stardust and King Barrett. My hope is that Stephen Amell does not do that well. Not for his sake, but just I hate when a celebrity comes in and somehow out-wrestles a seasoned competitor. You've got Owens and Cesaro, which I think has the potential to steal the show if they let them. If it doesn't, I'll be surprised.
Well, but there's an issue with that match, though.
What's the issue?
Owens is wrestling and losing the night before.
Oh, no. Owens is wrestling. No, not necessarily.
Interesting.
Not
But he is wrestling the night before.
Yeah.
He is wrestling the night before, but if you've read the spoilers of the NXT shows, he's showing up with the NXT title on his shoulder.
Oh, that's
right. So he could be winning the night before. But it brings up a good point because you know what? Both these guys need a win. You got two guys that are kind of positioned to break into the top, and whoever loses, I mean, if it's a hell of a match and you know they squeak it out with somebody just squeaks out a victory at the end, I think they could look all right. But I don't want to see anybody lose this match. Let's put it that way.
If you read the crowd reactions from TV, the push seems to be Cesaro.
And rightfully so. Cesaro's been, tossed around so many times and disregarded that if you have to pick one of these guys, push Cesaro because he's not going to get another chance. Owens has already beaten Cena, so, he could probably handle, if it was a real tough, long feud, he could handle coming out on the bottom end of that and it wouldn't hurt him too much. But, there's that. But, and then let me just cover one other of the kind of undercard before we talk about these two main events. You got Bray Wyatt, Luke Harper against Roman Reigns and Dean Ambrose. What do you guys think? They're sort of teasing a turn here, but I don't quite know if it's time. What do you think?
I was kind of really not understanding the psychology behind a lot of the promos with Dean and Roman Reigns, unless they're just, again, trying to make it completely obvious that one of these guys is turning. The whole stuff of, oh, how do you like your beer, or no, how do you like your coffee, or I know how he likes his coffee, or he likes his animal crackers slightly crushed, or all this weird, goofy stuff that men just do not talk about with each other.
I really wonder if they're almost teasing a heel turn to kind of, it's almost to play with the internet people.
But which one? Which one?
The Roman Dean switch isn't going to happen, and we're going to get a third Wyatt.
I think you're right. I think they're going to delay this for a little while. I think it's just either bad writing or they're teasing it without the intention of doing it. I mean, I hope for Roman's sake that they turn him heel soon, but I have this feeling it's not happening until this gets a little further into the feud. I think it's going to be long term.
And he knows how I like my beer, ice cold.
Yeah,
like really cool. Like that's what you got. That's what you got to be cool. Is that I like my beer. I drink beer and it's ice cold. That means I'm tough.
Yeah, that's right.
Here's the other thing. WWE was just making a big deal out of the fact that Cena and Roman Reigns had done so many charitable appearances and all this stuff and really pushing them. And they got some kind of award, didn't they, Sean? I thought
they did. They got onto some list of the most charitable celebrities or something. And you can't say that on your TV this week and then turn Roman heel. Yeah, you can't do that so that everyone goes, who's Roman Reigns? And then when they turn in, he's turned heel. You want him to still be a face at that moment. So I don't think it's happening quite yet.
That's a really good point. I haven't even thought of it. Regarding the main events, what are you guys thinking?
Well, look, let's. I want to save Lesnar and Undertaker till the very end because they've got so much to talk about. But we've got Rollins and Cena, and by God, they seem to have painted themselves into a corner here because I don't want to see Cena as champion again. But I don't want to take the U.S. title off of him either because he's been quite entertaining in it. So, I mean, what's going to happen here? Is it going to be a non-finish? I've heard this is going to be an ongoing feud. What have you guys heard? What do you think?
Sean, what are you getting?
I think I agree with you. I like Cena with the U.S. title. That being said, I've heard that they are ice cold on Seth right now, and this change is out of they're not happy with Seth, and this change is happening not because necessarily they were planning for it, but because they feel like Seth didn't do with the title what they wanted him to, and this is a quick fix.
Well, I would be surprised if that happens. I don't know. They seem to have left it on him for so long. Maybe. I guess we just have to watch and see. They definitely have the story going with a sensible story going here with Cena having had his face broken and now coming back for some kind of revenge. But I hope that Seth isn't getting shortchanged. He's done a good job with what he was given, and I think he's certainly improved since WrestleMania. Sort of every month gotten a little bit better.
I think the mistake is going away from the Triple H program that they had originally thought about.
I do too.
I think that was a better program. I mean, he's not been booked well as a champion. I mean, that much I can say. He's not been booked well as a champion to be a strong, credible champion. In terms of how he's done as a character or like in those 20-minute things, I think everybody across the board hates those intros.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anybody I talk to anymore that's like, oh my God, that first 20-minute promo on Raw was so great. No. It's the same thing every week. And with him, I think he has actually improved. He's just still not very good.
Yeah.
Is anybody else curious about why Jon Stewart is there?
'Cause he's a fan.
Well, no, but are they going to do something with Seth Rollins again?
That could be. It could be. You know, they set that up ages ago and they never really delivered on it. Maybe there will be somehow Stewart being involved, but Jon Stewart's so tiny. I hope he's not involved in any kind of credible sense.
Are we talking Stewart versus Rollins at WrestleMania?
No.
Oh my God.
You could, if you really wanted to. I don't necessarily think this is a good idea, but WWE, they get so desperate for any kind of attention mainstream-wise. Yeah. You could do the Jay Leno thing with him. If you really wanted to, you could put him in a tag match with John Cena.
Do that, though.
No, I hope not. You know what they could do, though? Remember Master Blaster from Mad Max? The little guy? They could put Stewart on somebody else's shoulders and have him fight Seth, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, that might work, too.
That's the only way it's going to work.
That might work, too.
I think.
A couple other rumors I've heard just of interest that may affect main event match before you get to the Taker and Lesnar thing. Rumors persist that Rock is going to be around. So I don't know where that goes. And I've seen pictures that Ronda Rousey is in Brooklyn.
Really? So, I knew about Rock. Doesn't surprise me about Ronda. I had always heard that SummerSlam would be sort of the next step in whatever the hell it is they're doing with her.
Yeah. Does anybody else roll their eyes when Rock shows up at wrestling? I'm kind of tired of him. He needs to go away for longer. It's not special anymore.
Or do it and promote it. Don't have him just show up.
Yeah.
To me, the biggest negative on The Rock showing up on wrestling these days is that he makes everyone else look like such a goddamn amateur. I'm sorry. There's people that are not Rock fans that are going to say, oh, I don't know about that. I think there's a couple guys on the roster that are pretty much around the Rock level. No. There's nobody on that roster that has the control of a crowd that the Rock has. He's a professional actor, for God's sakes. I mean, I don't know if that necessarily even has that much to do with it, but I guess it does. I mean, he was always good. That's why I say that. But, I mean, that's the biggest problem is that he comes back and he just has a charisma and a control over the audience. Mind you, and this does need to be said, and Shan, you'd probably agree, he's given a lot more freedom. He's given complete freedom to do whatever he wants, whereas other guys aren't necessarily able to show what's inside of them. They don't have that same creative freedom or just, have the handcuffs taken off. With that said, I mean, that's my biggest thing is that Rock comes back and everybody's like, wow, that's a promo guy. Now what do we have on Raw? We have a 20-minute Seth Rollins intro. And again, it just kind of the same as when they show clips from old wrestling, like when they'll show Savage and Hogan, that great angle or anything like that on the WWE Raw show. It just seems so much better than anything going on now. So yeah, that's my only thing with Rock. What he will be doing, I'm assuming, is still the Triple H match at WrestleMania, right?
Good Lord. Honestly. Like, do you remember me saying, I'm so sick of Rock versus Triple H? Like, so many times we watch pay-per-views, I'm like, oh, God, they're still fighting. I don't want to see them fight again. Now they managed to come back and get me, like 20 years later. Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Sean, your thoughts on that match? You still think that's where they're going with the Rock versus
It seems to be where they're going.
And if everything I've heard, yeah.
There's one other thing I've heard, and it was Rock and Roman Reigns, but I don't know when they do that. Mm-hmm. Against each other. So.
I could see that at some point, just for the whole family, for the fact that they can say, two people from our family ended up headlining WrestleMania.
Yeah.
Maybe that's.
I don't know if that'll be Mania or some other point, but I've heard that match is rumored somewhere down the line.
Reigns, though, like that guy, he's far away from that spot right now. He's far away from that spot.
That's just what I read.
through no fault of his own either, because honestly, I think the guy, if he had not been given that false start, he's progressing quite nicely from where he started out. He seems more comfortable. He's better in the ring. He's more fun to watch. He's just not as good as they thought he was. And I don't think there's any reason he should have been yet. So no. I think he's suffered more than anybody on that whole thing. I mean, more than anybody that's had to watch it. I think he's suffered as far as having to find his footing in a very difficult situation.
His problem is the same thing that Bobby Lashley suffered from. He was too damn big and too damn good looking. And Vince McMahon saw him.
And went too fast. He wasn't... And
people within the company have said that they tried to hide Bobby Lashley. How do you hide a man that big? I don't know. But,
you don't.
But they were trying to hide Bobby Lashley during his early cutting his teeth kind of days. in OVW. That was OVW, still with him, yeah. And they were trying to hide him from Vince because they knew what would happen. That Vince would see him, he'd fall in love with the physique, and he'd rush him onto TV. And then we had December to Dismember. That was where that one ended.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I totally, Reigns, a lot of it has not been his own fault. Mind you, you're given an opportunity. I know he had all kinds of parameters that he had to work around, but you were given an opportunity, and if you're not good enough, or you just don't have it inside of you, or you can't connect with the people, some of that is on you.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't think Roman's ever connected with the people, really, that much, yet. So anyway, who knows where he goes? Again, he could be the main event of WrestleMania and the world champion next year. They could have him win the Rumble again this year, 2 years in a row. Quite possible. But right now, it seems just kind of strange to even think about, to be honest with you.
Well, honestly, he's still riding out the momentum he had with the Shield, and I think that was really any of the popularity he had coming out was what he built with those three guys. And not surprisingly, he's still working with Dean now. So, that may not be by accident. They may... it'll give him a little bit of extra momentum. But I agree with you. He's fumbled, and it's time to either just leave him alone for a while and see if he grows into something else.
Did anybody hear at all about any kind of heat on Seth Rollins for breaking Cena's nose?
Yes.
You think, does that tie into what you said earlier about them not being super hot on him right now?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Because, when you watch it, it was just like, what were you thinking? What did you think that was going to be? Because I've seen lighter flying knees in UFC. He just absolutely destroyed that nose. And John Cena obviously had to have the reconstructive surgery and all that stuff. I thought he looked pretty good though.
Yeah, he did actually.
His doctors did a good job.
Yeah.
And how tough is he? We've put over the guys in the G1 and everything, but how tough is John Cena? We've got to give it up to that guy. Not only is he coming off probably the best stretch of matches maybe of his entire career over the last few months, but he proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that guy is all man.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, my respect, as I've said, for him has grown since WrestleMania to such a great degree. That's why I actually don't want him to lose the U.S. title, so that has to say something there. So
just one question about that match before we move on to Taker and Lesnar. Do you think there's any way that this match, we talked about it being inconclusive, that it's going to be more of a spin-off to Rollins' next opponent or a spin-off to Cena's next opponent more than it is an inconclusive, we're going to do this again match?
I would hope that it is, because I think that makes a lot more sense. I don't think they need to unify those two titles or get into the weird situation where one guy has to hold both. Although, Jay Lethal's doing a fantastic job of that in Ring of Honor. But I would like to see them stay where they are and just kind of work it through. I'd love to see another program come out of this. But then we'll get into that in a moment when we talk about Brock and Undertaker, because I'm kind of hoping that for them as well. But are we ready to move into that now, guys?
Yeah.
All right, so this is the story, and it's hard to know how to approach this and to know kind of what's going on, because they've Undertaker's been booked in such a strange way. And for those of you that didn't see Raw this week, Undertaker went for the low blow again and beat down Brock in his hometown. They booked Undertaker in this weird, sneaky, creepy heel way again, in front of a crowd they knew was going to tear him a new one. And that's exactly what they did. And I can remember saying, afterwards to you guys, how weird it is to see The Undertaker booed, because it's not like John Cena or somebody like that, or The Rock, where you can turn on them and it's kind of understood. It's more like turning on Stone Cold or Ric Flair, who hold a certain level of respect that even if you don't like what they're doing, you're not going to boo them. So it was kind of a weird situation. What did you guys think as this is going on?
Sean, go ahead.
One thing that confused me, I understood they were in Minnesota and that crowd was going to boo Taker regardless. What intrigued me about it when I went back a second time was the announcers put Taker over as a heel.
Yeah, so it's not accidental.
Over the low blow like crazy.
Exactly. They didn't just work around it. And again, like the weird angle they've come into with this, with Undertaker whining about Brock bragging about beating him, wasn't he supposed to brag? All he did was brag, and only for a while. He hadn't bragged about it in ages. And it was a year and a half ago. You guys have been in the same building several times before. And he didn't even, and we know that Undertaker, when the streak was broken, was suffering from a concussion. But let's just face facts. Brock mopped the ring up with him, threw him around, and pinned him clean. So there's really no reason for an Undertaker character as a face to complain about that. Undertaker as a heel being kind of whiny, then yes. But I'm just kind of like, it's not that I don't like it. I kind of like the fact that I don't know what's going on, but at the same time, I'm kind of like, is this really a great idea for Undertaker, who I'm assuming is heading towards the very end of his career, to take this turn? I don't know what they have planned for it. What are your thoughts?
This is definitely, it's not a main event that you were like, I don't care about and I don't need to see it. It's definitely a match that, although you don't anticipate it's going to be great, you're kind of going into it like, I need to see what exactly they're going to do, or what's the crowd going to do. But it's not really like from a creative standpoint. I think it's personally just bad creative. I don't think they have any kind of a heel run or any heel idea for Taker, personally. But I mean, there is a lot of smoke, to this fire, because he kicked him in the balls, and he did it again this week. And like you say, Shan, what's wrong with promoting the fact that he beat The Undertaker at WrestleMania? In a lot of ways, it's a compliment. Because if it was nothing, you wouldn't mention it. It would just be another win at WrestleMania. Who gives a shit? He's a sack of shit and I beat him. He constantly talks about how he's the only guy that was able to beat Undertaker at WrestleMania. He's not supposed to promote this?
Yeah.
It's weird. It's just a weird thing.
Go ahead.
The booking is very confusing in the sense of, you don't know what the crowd in Brooklyn is going to do. I have a feeling Taker's getting booed in Brooklyn.
Me too.
I think he is too, and I think because they've put him with Brock, who's, I mean, gotta be considered one of the hottest, if not the hottest property in WWE right now. The fact they put them together at all makes me scratch my head. Here's what I think, and I'll let you guys get back to what you were saying. I think one of two things is going to happen. Either this match is just going to be about Undertaker showing that he could stand up to Brock, that it's going to end inconclusively by going off into some kind of other matches. They'll get jumped by somebody and have to work together. I think either that's going to happen, or somehow Undertaker's going to pull out like a DQ or a count out or something, and they're going to actually build this towards a retirement match at WrestleMania where Brock will retire him. Because I really feel like Taker's near the end. If maybe they're doing this sort of desperation thing with him, and maybe that's what it's going to play out as, that Undertaker's desperate. He's got to show that he can beat him. He's, cutting corners and doing all this other stuff. And then it builds towards a retirement match, because I have a feeling Taker would want to go out as the loser in a retirement match, just because he's done that for other people as well. So I'm thinking of Shawn, he
Sure.
retired Shawn and whatever. But that's all I can think right now, is that we're in the last year of The Undertaker's career. It really feels like that.
Yeah.
So something significant needs to come out of that. And if it's building towards a retirement match, that's fine. I think Brock can afford to lose to Undertaker if he's going to retire him shortly thereafter, or within 6 months.
Well,
but sorry, go ahead.
Everything I have heard, and this has been going on for a while, and I'm sure you both heard it, was WrestleMania 32 in Houston, 130 people, 130,000 was Taker's.
130 would be pretty interesting
130,000
environment.
people in AT&T. That'll be Taker's last match.
Yeah, it's a perfect place to do it, in his home state, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess we'll just see where it goes with this, because certainly has been an interesting conclusion to all of this.
Listen, I really do want to believe that WWE has got a creative idea for this thing, and that this wasn't just bad booking that was put together by people that are just, out to lunch, which is oftentimes a thing in WWE, unfortunately. So again, I want to believe, though, that there's something bigger here. Is there any chance that this isn't a heel run for Taker? Maybe, Sean, tying this into what you said about the Wyatts. And potentially Taker has aligned with the Wyatts, and maybe that's the way to get the win on Brock this weekend, is that there's going to be some kind of a new Ministry of Darkness type of thing. I know it seems ridiculous, because, again, where he is and what Shan said about his tenure and everything, and the fact that this is really the end for him, and again, that is bad creative just from that standpoint, that they're going to do this with Taker at this stage of the game. But is this completely to be ruled out?
No.
No.
I've never thought about it, but it makes sense, and the Wyatts could use the rub.
And he could do the whole thing of, I fought him last year and I saw what he's made of kind of thing, or?
Oh, yeah. And then, for sure they could do that, and then have I guess maybe some kind of final end if they want Taker to go out as a face, with the Wyatts turning against him and him having to fight them all off. I don't know, maybe something like that. But it certainly is intriguing. I'm still, I haven't been this interested in a WWE main event in a while. Not because I'm interested in the match itself, other than I hope Taker doesn't get dropped on his head too many times. But just to see where this is all headed, because it's that weird combination, like you said, of either this is really being done well and it's been done to intrigue the audience, or it's been done so poorly that you can't tell the difference. So I guess we'll see where it goes.
Again, is WWE just putting together a bad storyline? Have they just put together the wrong guys at the wrong time with the wrong... I don't know. There's been way too much to this, though. Again, the constant low blows, the whining, like we've said. And I don't know. Again, the more I think of it, I almost feel like there is a lot more to this than just a poorly put together program.
There's something there. We just have no idea what it is.
So
that's good. I like that.
Yeah. So again, for this match, that's the big thing that's drawing us to watch it. Is it going to end up being a flop and what the hell were they thinking, or is WWE going to go left? We'll see. We'll see this weekend, guys.
Exactly.
You guys going to watch the NXT show?
Oh yeah.
I'm going to try to.
Owens and Balor in a ladder match, please.
Jushin Liger's first WWE match ever.
Yeah.
An interesting story about him being there. I guess this whole deal with Liger got done in San Jose when there was an NXT show. And Finn Balor, obviously, Prince Devitt, was very, very close with Liger in his time in New Japan. And, they were still in touch and very good friends. And Liger actually came to that NXT show, sat front row, but nobody knew it was him because he didn't have the costume on.
So that was WrestleMania week. Right.
So Liger actually sat front row for that NXT show and watched his friend Prince Devitt, Finn Balor, and nobody knew that it was Jushin Liger. And I guess that was when Regal, who is close with Liger as well, they were in New Japan together. Regal spent some time there. And he was close with him as well, so he, I guess, talked to him, and they called Tiger Hattori, who is the North American guy he's the guy you talk to for North America. So Tiger Hattori, I guess, put the deal together. So that's how the Liger thing came about, just from him visiting Prince Devitt in San Jose. It's really going to be I think that's going to be a really fun match. I think it's going to be very, very similar to the Dalton Castle match.
I do too. God, I love Dalton Castle. I hate getting off topic like that, but you know what? I love Dalton Castle. I watched him again this week, and that's a guy that if he doesn't end up in WWE as a major star, I'll be shocked.
Absolutely. No question about that. You won't hear any argument from me. I'm a Dalton Castle guy too. So I think we're about ready to take it home to the final segment, and Sean Cunningham, at this point, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you very much, sir. Now, we haven't been on the air for a while. As we talked about at the beginning of the show, we all went on summer vacation. And unfortunately, during the summer vacation, at the end of July, there was some very sad news in the wrestling world. One of the great legends, Roddy Piper, passed away near the end of July. And it caused me to think about all the memories I have of Piper. I think of the one chance that I unfortunately only had in my life to see him work live. And I wondered what was your first memories of Piper to both of you? And what was your favorite memories of Piper?
Now, Shaka Shane, you started watching wrestling before I did. Your first memories of Roddy Piper, that's really interesting. I've never really talked to you about that.
Well, let me correct you on that. I started watching wrestling before you were really aware of it, I think, because you were certainly born, but I don't think you really kind of were old enough to appreciate it. But I think it was always a part of your life, right, growing up.
As early as I can remember, yes.
Yeah. I mean, my early memories of Roddy were always in that build towards the first WrestleMania. I was aware of him in that way where, I guess maybe because I'd just been new to wrestling, it didn't seem strange to me that this guy who was just a relatively normal-sized guy was such a huge threat to a giant monster like Hulk Hogan. But I didn't question it at the time, and I don't question it now when I go back and watch it, because Roddy had that kind of personality where he could really kind of transcend his own physical limitations through the character and just through his skill in the ring. So those were like my earliest memories, were the lead into WrestleMania with who did he hit over the head with the gold record? Was it Captain Lou?
Yeah, he hit Captain Lou. Yeah.
That's one of the memories that I have of Roddy, earliest memories. Some of my favorites were certain random ones. There was a match that was on Coliseum Video, and I'm looking here to find the listing for it, and I can't find it. But it was like a precursor to the Survivor Series before they ever did a Survivor Series, where it was Roddy Piper and his team against Randy Savage and his team when Savage was still a heel, and it was awesome. If I could find that match, I would just go crazy for it. But it was a great match. It's something I remember. But another thing I always remember were his interviews that he did in his Adrian Adonis feud, when he described Adrian as looking like his stretch marks looked like a road map of Idaho or something like that, and he said he looked like he just had a litter of puppies. And the rapid, I know what the name, the rapid fire insults that would come off. That, I mean, there's just terrible stuff to say, but those kind of things, I always remember just how quick he was to come up with something that was insulting but also really, really funny. So that was, to me, that was sort of Roddy. He was the sweet and sour, right? He was a vicious jerk character, but it was so hard not to laugh no matter what you were thinking of him at the time.
Well, yeah, in a business where shit talk equals money, I don't think there was anyone with a quicker wit, like you say, rapid fire, than Roddy Piper in that sort of 84 to 86, or I guess 87. When was WrestleMania 3?
87.
Yeah, so say like 84 to 87. And Sean, I mean, Shan really did bring up a good point about Roddy's physical limitations. He was one of the smallest guys really to ever work a program with Hogan. And it was the program that really was responsible when you look at all the factors involved: Cyndi Lauper, Hulk Hogan, Mr. T. I mean, you did a really good podcast, and I got to tell everybody out there and really recommend your history of WrestleMania podcast that you did about WrestleMania 1, because you really got into the details of, you know, the things that led up to that, the war to settle the score, but all the other things. So I really got to recommend people to go check it out. I'm going to put it up on our front page.
We'll find it, yeah.
Yeah, it's on the Spreaker page, and it's on the Facebook page, but I'm going to put it front and center on the homepage of WrestlingAudioRevolution.com. But the fact that Piper, for his size, at a time when Vince was so in love with the biggest guys and bigger was better, it really does show you how good he was as a character, as a talker, as a money-drawing force in that company.
The other thing about Piper that I went in doing research, I found really interesting, he was the only guy that I can think of in WWF at the time who never got pinned or beat on TV.
Exactly. Yeah, that was the thing. You could never remember Roddy ever getting beat clean. I mean, they booked him like in a weird way, kind of like Andre the Giant, but just kind of a reverse Andre the Giant, and that he wasn't very big. He was a big heel. He should have been losing all these matches. But you're right, they kept him protected and they kept him clean. And I love that about him.
I did some research and I found that the first time he was ever pinned clean in WWF was by Bret Hart in 1992.
That's
so
right.
You're dealing with somebody who went almost 8 years in a company. He started in January of 84 to March of 92, never getting pinned on a house show, never getting pinned on TV, never getting pinned anywhere.
And that's really, we talk about the Hogan and Roddy dynamic and how the whole company really was built on that. The Rock and Wrestling cartoon, all that stuff. But at the very forefront, Piper and Hogan. And it's just amazing, really, when you think about it, the fact that Roddy never worked that program never really had an end to it. Like Roddy, it wasn't like the other Hogan programs where it goes, they get the heat on Hogan and Bundy splashes him and his ribs get taped up and all that. But then the end result is Bundy lays down 1, 2, 3. It happened with everybody else, too. It never happened with Piper, and it's kind of strange to think about the fact that was the program the company's built on, and yet it wasn't ever really, it was a house show run, but it was never really a full WrestleMania payoff run, and the reason is that Piper was not having that. That wasn't an option, and that goes to show how valuable he must have been at that time for Vince to still use him, to still put him as the top heel, knowing this guy won't lay down to my number one guy.
So I didn't even realize this, Sean, but so you're saying that he didn't even lose at house shows, that weren't even televised. Wow.
He would lose like count-out matches or disqualifications, type things like that. Never pinned. Never pinned. And even with Hogan, and they would be going around the loop. So, I mean, that wasn't an option. Piper was not willing to lay down for anybody. The reason with the Bret thing, and again, that's something that now would be vilified, right? Can we all agree on that if somebody did that, it would be vilified?
Yeah.
When you look back at Piper in that time, I mean, that was his way of protecting that brand. That was his way of protecting, because again, it wasn't just a WWF thing. He was Roddy Piper before he came to WWF, and he had to consider the fact that he may be Roddy Piper after he leaves WWF, and he was always so concerned about protecting that brand and that image and that character. And the fact that Vince still used him as much as he did, knowing he wouldn't lose, really, again, like I say, it shows you how valuable he must have been at that time. And with Brett was a family friend. They were close. And also, Roddy, you got to remember, at that time, he'd already kind of left wrestling in a lot of ways. He was doing the movies, and wrestling, he didn't have that same attitude anymore. It was like kind of more of a part-time thing for him at that point. So he thought, it's fine for me now to give back and to put Brett over. And my God, did he ever put Brett over in that match?
It was a great match. That's one of my memories, my big memories of Roddy too, was that match, because it showed you something of Roddy in that match that you didn't often get to see. Just what a great technical wrestler he was and what he was capable of doing. He would generally fight a lot of brawl matches and, semi-comedy matches, but that was a real honest to God, technical match, which was great.
With the exception of the possible use of the bell at the end, but...
Oh, well, yes.
But even that, I got to put that over just from a performance standpoint. That's one of my favorite Roddy Piper moments ever. The whole story of him. Brett was really playing the heel for the match, for a lot of that match. Brett was doing what Brett tended to do, the faces and, just a little bit dirty, right? Because that was just the way Bret Hart, even from those days, was sort of working a babyface versus babyface match. But the acting of Piper with the bell, going to use it, but then having the crowd basically talk him out of it. There's not a lot of performers you can put that trust in and say, okay, go out there and you're going to do a whole interaction with the crowd where they're going to talk you out of using a bell on your friend. Period. That's probably what all they said to him. There'll be a point in the match where you go and you're going to get the bell, but then you change your mind. Everything else was Piper to fill it in, and he just was so good at that. Shan, we were sharing a few memories, I think, shortly after you passed away, and one of the things that you brought up that it's one of those things that people don't think about, at least I don't, maybe Sean, you do, but that infamous segment with Andre and Hogan, and Piper's role in that, even though he was just really like a background player.
Exactly. Piper sold that segment so well because the audience was able to identify with that scene through Roddy's reactions. And Roddy wasn't always the most sympathetic character, but he was able to be empathetic in that moment where you're able to kind of watch it through him. And there's that moment where Andre's ripped the shirt off and he's torn the chain, and Hogan's down on his knee and he's bleeding on his chest, and Piper leans forward and touches the blood and goes, "You're bleeding, man." And Hogan looks up at him like it's broken out of a trance. And he's so sort of humbled. And it was just such a great moment. And Roddy sold it because he was such a good actor. And he was able to make it seem legitimate. And it really kind of reflected what the audience was thinking at that moment. So that is another great Roddy moment for me.
I've done some digging into that particular promo that you mentioned. I found out that Roddy was using that promo because Andre was not known as a promo guy and couldn't really talk.
Couldn't really understand him.
No. Yeah. So you think about what you had selling that match and why the sale of that one segment was so good. You had Bobby Heenan, Jesse Ventura, Hulk Hogan, and Roddy Piper selling you that match.
Oh. And with Piper too, in that moment with the "You're bleeding, man" and all that stuff. It was also kind of just, I remember as a kid, it being a trip to see him and Hogan standing side by side.
Exactly. Yeah. It was that weird thing with the rivals suddenly, in the same context. It was really good.
Because they'd never had any kind of real makeup or anything. It's not like they'd ever even shaken hands really or anything like that. It's just that Piper was in the early stages of babyface dumb, and Hogan was out there with him. And just that moment, it was that weird feeling of, okay, there's the closure between these guys because Piper's actually concerned about what just happened to Hulk, just incredible. When you look back on it.
Well, and even to that point that you mentioned, I've seen Coliseum videos, and I'm sure, Shan, you might remember this too. They went around the loop and did tag matches.
Right.
As partners. But Piper would tag Hogan, and Hogan would but they'd look at each other with this disdain and disgust on their face of like, I hate you, but I'm going to work with you. But if this goes wrong, I'm going to kill you.
Exactly, yeah.
If there's one memory of Roddy Piper that I will always have, it's the obvious ones too, like the coconut and all that, but the one that's not so obvious, it was the and I don't even know because I was a kid, I don't even know how many weeks were separating these two programs. But there was the time when Adonis and Morocco and all those guys beat up Piper on Piper's Pit. Do you remember this?
I remember that. Yeah,
And they put the lipstick all over his face. And that was like a really, I remember at the time it was a really shocking angle. Like, wow, these guys all beat up Piper on Piper's Pit. And it just seemed like a real kind of gang beating. It didn't come across like pro wrestling. It came across like this group of really mean bullies beating up this guy. It's one against however many, you know. And then when Piper came back, I don't know how many weeks later, maybe it was months later in those days, I don't know. But when he came back and destroyed the flower shop, and he was on crutches. And, I mean, what a performance by Roddy Piper in that segment where he came back and he was just out for revenge and he couldn't even walk. I mean, that's cinema right there, you know?
And then we got that great program where he went through each of those guys before finally getting to Adonis, which was they don't do that anymore, and I wish that they would, where you're kind of like taking a step forward with another guy that's a bit tougher, and that was great, man.
And all I can remember when you say that is the Saturday's Main Event where he fought Orton shortly after that, and "Bubba babies ain't seen nothing yet," and he poured the coke on himself. You know, if I were to actually put it on right now, I could probably say it word for word. Right now, I can't remember some of the things he said, but I mean, just Roddy Piper, you just will never forget him. Obviously, a complicated individual, but as a performer, which we're here to talk about, and we've been talking about. Just one of the best. I mean, Sean, have you ever seen, I wouldn't say have you ever seen, but up there with the best and most believable brawlers. He didn't have a lot of moves, but he could still put on a really exciting match just by brawling. I think we may have lost Sean, actually.
Oh, okay.
I think he said he had to mute, and that's okay. We're actually coming pretty close to the end here, so any final thoughts, though, on things going on in the wrestling world, Roddy Piper, etc., Shan? A little wrap-up.
It's so sad to see Roddy gone. I mean, we've lost so many people recently, but Roddy was in a category of his own. He was a legend's legend. He belongs up there with Andre the Giant and Hogan before. I would say that the untarnished version of Hogan. I'm sure one day Hogan will, be forgiven and forgotten, but his indiscretions will be forgotten. But for now, I mean, Roddy's in that same league with Andre the Giant, and that he holds a piece of wrestling history that's not going to be repeated. I don't think you can send anyone in and ask them to kind of be the next Roddy Piper. That's really how special he was. So, to see him gone now, it is sad. And there's a big piece of wrestling history that's now gone as well. So I think, I'm glad that we were able to do this tribute to him. And as far as the rest of the wrestling world, I mean, it's time to have that little break after the G1 and catch our breath. And as I said, going into SummerSlam, I'm intrigued in the top matches. And I can't say that I felt that way in a while. So it could be a good summer, a good end to the summer. Let's put it that way.
I agree with you. Shotgun Shan, it's been great having you here. Sean Cunningham, are you still gone? Believe he is. That's okay. I will handle the duties here for the wrap-up. From myself, from Shotgun Shan, from Sean Cunningham. We want to say peace, love, wrestling audio revolution, rest in peace, Roddy Piper, and I'd like to say one final thing. I love you.
I missed the promotional consideration paid for by the following.
And of course, promotional consideration is paid for by the following. I'm going to pull out my wiener now.
my sentiments exactly, Rowdy Roddy Piper.